And I guess our next item is the authorization to award contract for Palo Alto High School Haymarket and Tower Boiler Replacement Project. And we saw that lovely picture of the orange boiler, so now you can picture what we're going to replace. Dr. Skelly.
Well, you know, I did some checking, and this boiler has been, I don't know if you hear it when you go over to Palo. It goes off every 10 or 15 minutes. The one we have now, it was featured in the some of the literature that we did around the bond program as one of the more ancient pieces of working equipment in the district. And in some ways, I think it'll be sad when that room takes on a different sense here. But to talk a little bit about the boring part of it, which is the awarding of the contract, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Golton.
Thank you, Dr. Skelly. Yes, those boilers that you saw the picture of the two of them, and then there was Rebecca, and the fact remains they were a major problem last winter. They were a major problem in delivering heat to the tower building, and so and in fact one of the boilers has always been inoperable, or at least for the last number of years, and is being used for parts for the other boiler, because you can't obtain parts anymore. Although they're really well painted, they're great in the sense of the way they look. The bidding was fine. There were, as you can see, there were 6 bids. That's all good. As you also can see, what we're always looking for is there an outlier in that low bid? And the answer is there wasn't. There was, approximately $400,000 bids. The difference between the first, second, and third bids was only $7,000. ESI has done work for us before at Palo and also at one of the elementary schools. This is what they do. Their work is very satisfactory, so we're fine with them, and so we're recommending that this be approved. It's one read. The board does 2 reads authorizing that the bid goes out, but then after that, when the bids come back, there's simply an action read. And so we're recommending the board award this contract.
Okay, Ms. Townsend.
Dr. Golton, you answered every question I was going to ask, so I'm good to go. Thanks.
Ms. Closer.
I thought I saw in your earlier slideshow that the budget for this was originally $800,000. Is that correct?
Yes, we were very, very conservative on this one. And actually, as a part of this, the bid itself was $400,000. The estimate as a component of that $800,000 was $450,000, and then we'd put in $350,000 for design and various contingencies and so on. And so they're off of our estimates. They're good size savings. We're good with this. This turned out to be quite a successful bid.
Ms. Mitchell. Mr. Tom.
Particularly seeing that photo of Ms. Navarro next to the boiler made me think, is there a difference we can expect in efficiency between the new boiler and the existing?
Yes, obviously. Today's boilers are much more efficient than those that we had. So, but we're also doing new piping over to the building, so it'll be improved on many different levels.
Is there any ballpark thought on the amount of savings?
I don't have that. Yeah, sorry about that.
Okay, but yeah, boilers typically do use a fair amount of energy. I mean, it's more than just a computer.
So perhaps Ms. Navarro can get us that information.
Well, actually, the savings come from not running the boilers as much. The savings come from not running heating as much, not running air conditioning as much, and one of the areas that Rebecca's working on is this particular area of, for instance, when do you start heating the rooms in the morning? What we've been doing here in the district is having a 2-hour period for ramping up the rooms in the morning. This is an incredibly uncommon period of time, and incidentally, one of the things we're doing is, and we've announced this, is we're moving that startup time to a half hour, which is the common startup time in public buildings. So that's where you get your major savings. Yes, this boiler's more efficient, but we're hoping to not use it as much.
And if it's broken, like it has been many times, that saves us energy too.
Actually, yes, that's a point.
Right.
Although I don't think we want to tell the administration at Pally that.
We could just not pass this and not heat the building. That would save us a lot, right?
I would bet it probably costs something every time we have to call a repairman. It might be nice not to have to pay that bill. Just on the same kind of thought process, we were talking about efficiency. Is this boiler going to put out less emissions? Is it going to be greener, in fact, than the old boiler?
Yes. And the aspect of this is now we'll actually have two boilers working. So one can work at much less, or I guess greater efficiency, if you will, and then at peak times the second one will kick in. So having two versus what we've really had over the last, I don't know, several years since I've been here, we've only really had one working at maximum capacity. So there's really, like I said, there's a lot of different ways that getting these two back installed is really going to help us. But as far as emissions, yes, today's boilers are much more, I guess, green, if you will, as far as emissions than these that are, I think, vintage 1960 or earlier. So
That was my last question. What year were these put in?
Yeah, Tom's right. It was the 1960s, and therefore the actually the impossibility of getting parts for them. Although actually, as we think about it, if you have an antique car, then it's also very difficult to get parts for your car.
Ms. Townsend? Oh, Alex. Yes, this is your hometown here.
Yeah, I actually had a question. How long do you think it'll take, and also how disruptive will it be if you're putting new piping into the tower building?
right, well, the piping to the tower will probably be the most visible and the most obtrusive to the campus, but that should be a fairly quick. They'll do it in sections, so we'll still maintain access. We won't be taking down the boilers at any point. Since there's two, we'll install the first boiler while the old one is still working. Then when that is up and running and the piping is in, we can get that first one running and then put the second one in and remove the other one. So we won't be without heat at any one point. It'll be phased, but there will be just some disruption in the quad as we're doing that piping.
Maybe I could ask you a question, Mr. Hodges. What kind of disruptions can the students expect to Ultimate Frisbee, to other activities on campus and the like? Yeah, I figured.
Well, I think
you didn't ask the question as well as I did.
Yeah, right. The line of piping is going to follow that walkway where actually it was torn up earlier this year. So it's essentially going to just cut off, I think, what we used to call the senior court area that's between Haymarket and the admin. So it'll just cut off that smaller little area. The larger part of the quad should be maintained, although I do think they are going to take a diagonal straight across to save some money. So that the little area towards the the east entry to the admin wing, that'll probably be the extent of where we get into the quad area.
That sounds good.
Are we ready to have a motion?
Sure.
This is an action item.
This is an action.
I'll move that we accept the lowest bid for the environmental systems, $392,000 for the Pally Haymarket and Tower boiler replacement project. Second.
Do we need to say that we have a change order not to exceed?
If you'd like.
Yes.
With a change order not to exceed 10% of the contract amount.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes 5-0. Our next item is the authorization to bid Strong Schools Bond Project at Fairmeadow Elementary School modernization and new construction project. Dr. Skelly.
This I will turn over to Dr. Galton.
Well, the board saw this design prior to it going to DSA, and now it's back. And at least as far as estimates are concerned, we currently are estimating a project in the order of $6.1 million on a budget of $6.3 million. So that's all good. That being said, our plan is to bid this out. I think we're planning to come back to the board probably at the December meeting. Yeah, we have a whole number of bids that we'll want to bring at the December meeting. And that, of course, is the final, that's the good estimate. That is what the lowest responsive bidder is willing to do the project for. But at this point, everything looks good, and we do 2 reads, and so we're certainly open to questions.
Thank you very much. Let me start with Ms. Coster. Ms. Mitchell?
Yes, Dr. Golden, were there any significant expenses as a result of the DSA review?
No, but we are, our back checks are scheduled for the last week of this month. So, but everything we've gotten back has been pretty, run of the mill. So.
Okay, Mr. Tom. Ms. Townsend.
Is there, since we have a new principal at Fair Meadows since the last time this came before the board, is there a timeline you would bring the principal, or is that even appropriate? It's always nice to put the new principal with the project ahead of us. Maybe not tonight, but what's your thoughts about that?
Well, as you know, that particular principal is he's not a new principal in the school district, and when he was assigned to that site, then we've had regular meetings with him, so he's fully aware of our timelines.
If you'd like him to come next meeting, I think he'd be delighted.
I mean,
to come.
if he would come, I would like it. It's nice to have the principal with the project now that there's a new principal on the project. So
we can do that. Well, do you mind if we put this on early in the agenda? It should be fairly fast, but get his take on what he sees in the designs and all that. Maybe he could just talk for a few minutes. I think he'd be delighted to do that.
Yeah, he'd be delighted to do that. He'd be pleased to.
Maybe he can talk more about this, but I thought maybe you could give us a sense of, while this construction is going on, how we house the students that would have been in those buildings that are going to be impacted, because we're not going to go down any students on this site while the construction is going on, or are we?
No, but we're not. If you remember, this construction is in a place where we don't have any kids now. We're not moving any portables.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, so you answered the question. We're not moving anyone anywhere. Everyone's staying where they are.
You answered that one too, though.
Okay, all right. Well, that's good to know. With all these projects going on, sometimes they get confused in my mind, and just want to make sure I understand. All right. This was a discussion item, so this is going to come back next meeting, and so thank you very much. Okay.